Hi everybody, I'm continuing my prophetic series of videos. I'm calling it the Systemic Prophet Path. In my previous video, I discussed the number one way that you miss a prophetic word, which is really faulty interpretation. And I gave you 5 keys to accurately interpret a prophetic word. I also introduced you to this concept that I'm calling the Systemic Prophet Path. I hope that I gave you some super concise, easy to understand instructions. And if you did not watch that video, you need to go find it so you can get caught up on this teaching. Learning your prophetic flow, learning how to maximize it, how to function fully within the sphere that God has called you to is really a bit easier than it sounds. I find that a lot of people overcomplicate it. They actually make it overwhelming, and it does not need to be overwhelming. Let's begin with this understanding that the prophetic is connected to our identity. Really, if I could say it this way, hearing from God is the privilege and the birthright of spiritual sons and daughters, according to Romans 8:14. Your spirit man is born again, if you've accepted Jesus, born in the image and the likeness of God. So I say it this way, you are hardwired to hear from heaven. You just need some basic tools for understanding and interpretation. In my last video, I explained that we've got to move from what I call a teaching paradigm to an apostolic paradigm that includes activation. You know, there's really nothing more frustrating than having a bunch of head knowledge without practical application strategies. If you didn't watch that video, go and watch it. The very first step on the systemic prophet path, which is what I'm introducing you right now, is to learn a little bit about 2 things: prophetic technology and types of prophets. So I'm going to give you an overview of some of the ways that God can speak. I call this prophetic technology, or prophetic tech for short. So let's talk about ways that God can speak. Number 1 is sight. A lot of prophetic people receive the voice of the Lord visually, having visions. In Ephesians 1:17, Paul is praying for the church that the eyes of their understanding be enlightened or opened. So sight includes visions. It includes open visions, inner visions, night visions. These are 3 different types of visions you can have. Secondly is sound. Sound is so important. You know, the Bible speaks of Jesus standing at the door of the church knocking, and he that has ears to hear, it says in the book of Revelation, will open up. And so Jesus speaks to the church. He speaks to you and I. The voice of the Lord is one way he communicates. It's one method of prophetic technology. Some people receive through sight. Other people receive through sound. The still small voice. I call another dimension the thundering or the loud voice of God. Then the audible voice of God. Sometimes just little impressions that we have. And then another way, this is kind of a strange way that God can actually lead us, is taste. Now, I know y'all are going to say, wait a minute, Ryan, you're getting out there. Psalms 119, 103 is a great verse of scripture. Let me look it up for you. Psalms 119, 103. God can actually speak to you, and you can receive communication from God in the area of taste. It's not always often, it's not frequent, but it does happen in the lives of people. And it's a powerful way that God can speak to you. I think sometimes it's a way that the discerning of spirits can operate. Sometimes it's a way that you can sense what's going on in a climate or an atmosphere, and you can pick up on something that is out of order or something that the Lord is doing, the sweetness of the presence of God. So it says this, it says, how sweet are thy words unto my taste, yea, sweeter than honey to my mouth. There are other scriptures, but for time, I'm not going to go into all of the other scriptures because I want to keep going. And then smell. Ephesians talks about the aroma of God in Ephesians 5:2. Smell. Sometimes people with the discerning of spirits, they will literally smell something. They'll smell something foul. Another thing is the mind of the Spirit. In Romans 8:26, it talks about the mind of the Spirit. Romans 8:26. There is a spiritual mind. God has a mind, and he can give you God thoughts, impressions, inward leading. Sometimes you don't have a dream, you don't have a vision, but you have a thought, a prompting. Now, I want to talk about 2 primary types of prophets, and then I'm going to give you a quick list of prophetic types. So learning your prophetic technology, how God speaks to you. Does he speak through sight? Does he speak through sound? And then getting activation and training in that area will help you. So let me give you 2 different types. In 1 Samuel 9:9, it talks about a prophet being a seer. There are many prophets who see. That's the primary method of communication. Prophetic tech is the how, okay? So a seer, the word seer in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew, is the word roi. I always say I'm probably not saying that correctly. It means to see or to perceive. The seer is profound in the area of visually perceived prophetic revelation and communication. They have dreams, visions, angelic encounters. 4 scriptures that talks about a seer. Jeremiah 1:11. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me saying, Jeremiah, what do you see? And then I said, I see a branch. So God asked Jeremiah, what do you see? Jeremiah sees and responds. Zechariah 1:18 says, I lifted up mine eyes and I saw. Again, we see sight. Revelations 22:1, the angel showed me a river with the water of life. So seeing. And then John 5:19, because of time, I'm not going to read it. So seers get prophetic communication visually. That's the prophetic technology. So if a seer, someone who sees, expects to hear, they may be disappointed. Now, these are not hard, fast rules. You can hear and you can see. Another word you're going to find associated with the prophetic, and if you've studied it all, you know it, is the Nabi, to bubble up. Nabi prophets are prophets who are inspired. They move under the inspiration of the Lord. There's a bubbling up. They're good with spontaneous prophecy. It means their grace to decree and to declare what they've heard. They don't necessarily function in the revelatory visionary capacity. These prophets are at home, Nabi prophets, prophesying to people spontaneously and verbally. They're strong in the inspirational and audible graces of hearing from the Lord. 3 scriptures that can define a Nabi prophet. Exodus 4:12, go therefore, and I will be your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. That's God speaking there. Ezekiel 3:27, when I speak to you, I will open your mouth and you shall say to them. And then in 1 Samuel 23:2, the Spirit of the Lord speaks through me. So Nabi prophets are those that receive an inspired word bubbling up. Now, there are a lot of different prophetic types, and this is one thing that will hinder you prophetically, is if you put God in a box. And I want to give you some of the prophetic types. Minstrels, 2 Kings 3:15 is a good scripture for that. Dancing prophets, Exodus 15:20. Psalmists and minstrels. So a minstrel is more of a musical prophet who plays musically. A psalmist is one who sings the word of the Lord. Scribes, we find Habakkuk was a scribe, Habakkuk 2. Governing prophets, those prophets of the governing word. Shamar prophets, those prophets that have a watch word, a warning word. Apostolic prophets, as Samuel was. Revelatory prophets. Power prophets like Elijah and Elisha, who had a strong level of demonstration. So let's do a really quick recap. In order to understand and maximize your unique prophetic function, here's 2 keys you need. Number 1, you need to understand that you're called to function from a place of identity. This is typically a journey, so don't beat yourself up. Grow in the grace of God. Number 2, you need to identify, study, and embrace the prophetic technology and the different types of prophets that God uses and the ways in which He'll speak to you and through you. No 2 prophetic people are wired exactly alike. Additionally, there are lots of different prophetic functions and flows. It's imperative that we understand this and that you properly identify your function and your placement. As we go along on this journey, we're going to identify some of the possible systems that prophets are called to so that you can succeed in the prophetic. I'm gearing up for SPI 2.0, Seers and Prophets Intensive. During this course, I'm going to be sharing strategies and revelation with you. I'm going to thoroughly equip you along with Dr. Oscar Gabadia and Apostle Tamara McNair Hicks. We're going to talk about the seer realm. We're going to talk about identifying your sphere. We're going to talk about interpreting prophetic dreams and much, much more. I'm going to be releasing more information about this online intensive coming up, and I'm going to show you exactly what's included. But we are compiling an early bird list because I'm taking a limited number of students, and if you get on the early bird list, you're going to get notified when registration goes live 24 hours ahead of everybody else so you can get your slot. We're limiting participants, and we're only going to keep registration open for a couple of days. So I want you to go on, and I want you to secure your spot at seersandprophets.com. In my next video, I'm going to share what I believe is the most critical concept that every prophet and prophetic person needs. What is it? You got to tune in and find out in my next video. I'll see you then.